Welcome to the Freedom Founder Podcast. I'm your host, Zach Duggar. Have you ever read a prolific journey of a story of someone that's brought inspiration into your life? Well, my guest today, John Crossman, is someone that has brought some inspiration into the lives of many. He's one of the most well known and respected retail real estate minds in the country. He's the president of Crossmark Services, where he and the Crossmark team provide investment, advisory, and brokerage services. Currently involved in numerous projects, including several developments as well as tenant representation assignments. John has demonstrated involvement and leadership in the commercial real estate industry and has held numerous leadership positions with a number of organizations, both nationally and locally. He's an active speaker, writer on a national scale. He's been featured in the Wall Street Journal, New York Times, Washington Post, Forbes, Associated Press, Shopping Centers Today, Shopping Center Business, the Business Journals, and CBS News. Also been named one of Florida Trend's top 500 most influential business leaders. He's passionate about diversity and education and serves at 3 universities in Florida. Alongside his passion for diversity, John's also passionate about mental health awareness and the development of young professionals and college students. This led to the development of Crossman Career Builders, and as part of his goal to have an impact in the workplace on challenging topics like race, mental health, education, he hosts 2 podcasts, the Crossman Conversation and the Crossman Conversation CEO Edition. He also actively supports various suicide prevention efforts through personal efforts, as well as efforts through both Crossmark Services and Crossman Career Builders. Now, John, it's an honor to have you as a guest on the show today. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. That was a lot. That was a big introduction. Like, maybe they double your pay for that. That was a big deal.
Well, when you have a prolific journey through your life, you have a lot to share. So, I appreciate that. And also, as we get started here, generally, when someone is getting started in business, they're either starting by working for someone
hmm
or they're starting by starting their own venture as an entrepreneur. As you got into your career path, how did your journey start? Were you an employee? Did you jump right into becoming an entrepreneur?
Yeah, so I graduated from college in 1993, and that was actually a sort of challenging economic time. And I wanted to get into real estate, and it was a tough market. Very few people were hiring. So I just played this game like, who do I know in real estate? And every time I, meet somebody, come across a name, I'd call them and ask just to meet for coffee or something.
Yeah,
And I remember driving to my 10th one, Zach. I was driving downtown Orlando to my 10th one and being like, this is a complete waste of time. My life's a failure.
sure.
My life's over. And I
Yeah,
went to that meeting, and that was with a guy named Bob McClelland. And Bob, at the end of the meeting, ended up hiring me. And I worked at that company and companies that ended up acquiring for 13 years. So my
okay.
first 13 years were in corporate America. I will tell you that whether I've been in corporate America or entrepreneurial or by myself
Yeah,
or volunteering, all of that I've taken in with the same level of enthusiasm and passion. And that's always
yeah,
really, really helped me. I will say that I think that I did a lot of good things when I worked in corporate America, but I think a lot of corporate America, just like a lot of corporate church, struggled with me. I
sure.
think a lot of times in big structure, they want you to kind of fit in a box. And I wasn't trying to not fit in the box, but
Sure.
I constantly kept falling out of the box. And then,
Yeah,
I sort of figure that out.
okay. So you mentioned that also a corporate church that they struggled with you. So now, in regards to that, when you think about the manner in which you approach things, what would be different about how you approach things that might result in corporate America or corporate church struggling with you?
Um, you know, if I had to go back in time, I
Yeah.
think that I would have been more patient in both those situations
Okay.
and probably in a different way, just lowered my expectations.
Sure.
I think I would have realized that both corporate church and corporate America can do some things, and there's some things they're just not qualified or interested in doing, and that's okay.
Okay.
And, sometimes when you're with a corporation or with a church, they want you to be completely all in. And you're like, hey, I am all in. And I want to do these other things like have my own
Yep.
podcast or something.
Yep.
And that's hard for those corporations to understand that. So I had to learn to kind of put it on a shelf. All right. Like
Yeah.
I'm going to do this over here and enjoy that. And then I'm going to do this over here. And
Okay.
I also had to get around other people, other CEOs and other entrepreneurs who could handle that, because some people just can't. Like, it's the way they're structured, and God made them that way, and that's awesome. But
Yeah.
I need to have the ability to have some more freedom to be who I am.
Okay. So you found that it was beneficial and continues to be beneficial to be out around like-minded individuals in
Yeah.
that
Well, it's both,
entrepreneurial
right?
space.
It's
Mhm.
like-minded, and it's good around people that are exact opposite. It's both,
Okay.
right? It's like
Yeah.
I need entrepreneurs around me that get me,
Yep.
but it's also good around the opposite to have that perspective too.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. So would you say that ultimately, with regards to corporate America and the work that you were doing, that some of the pushing yourself and some of the outside the box thinking resulted in you deciding to move into more of an entrepreneurial space, or how did that become part of your journey?
It wasn't structured in that
Okay.
way. I mean, I
Hmm.
like back in the day, like there wasn't as much talk about entrepreneurial space and things like
Yeah.
that. So, listen, honestly, Zach, I was really just trying to survive. I just was like
Okay.
working really hard, trying to
Yeah.
survive, trying to be who I felt like I needed to be. I did not have a task list, a bucket list, a dream journal where I'm like, I want
Hmm.
to be CEO, or I want to start my own company, or that really wasn't part of it. I was really trying to, like, kill it where I was at. And then
Yeah.
I kept going into that direction, right? I had
Okay.
a lot of leadership positions put on me at a very young age, and I think some of that was good, some of that probably I probably wasn't ready for. But I think that my passion and high energy and
Yeah.
desire to, like, get results. A lot of people don't understand, what is at the core mission. I like Harris Rose in The Hotel Guy, and he talks about, heads on beds, right? Like, if you're
Hmm.
running hotels, like, at the end of the
Yep.
day, what does the lobby look like, or what kind of breakfast do you serve? That's all important, but it's heads on beds, right?
Yep.
And so to me, it's like, when you're a corporation, it's like it's getting deals done. As a church, it's like, getting people in the room and making impact, right? Like, it's
Right.
really understanding what creates results. And so I was always about, wherever I was creating results. And then I had to,
Okay.
like, get to know myself better about what was the better metrics. I'll also point this out.
Yeah.
As I had some levels of success and then wanted to kind of evolve, there were people that were very much against that, right?
Hmm.
I remember talking to a very senior guy at this corporation, and I said, I'm really not happy and not fulfilled. And he said, well, look at what you're earning. He's like, just keep doing that. That's what he said. He's like, just
Yeah.
keep doing that. And
Hmm.
it's like, he didn't want to hear it. He did not want to hear it. And of course, I've also learned that, in the different corporate worlds I've been in, I've had people who've been big fans of mine until I wasn't making money anymore, and now they
Yeah.
don't care.
Okay.
Like, they were my best friends when I was putting cash in their bank accounts, but
Yeah.
once it was not benefiting them, they'd have interest, and so that was a hard lesson to learn too. So I think I kind of kept gravitating that way, and then I will tell you that I had to be very intentional about learning some skill sets.
Yeah.
When I first became a CEO, it's like I just started, like, doing research about what CEOs do and how do they get better. I joined a CEO group, I just hired a
Hmm.
CEO coach, and even though some aspects that I already knew or I was already good at, I really wanted to go back to basics and really try to keep onboarding skill sets that I didn't have before.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Now, Crossmark Services, is that a company that was built with another person?
Yeah,
Just given the name, it sounds like
yeah,
there's at least somebody
yeah.
else involved.
So I have another partner in that deal
Yep.
that's been really helpful and really supportive. And so we do a lot of stuff together. So I have a partner in that company. And then last year we bought 3 shopping centers. We've got 3 active developments this year. We're trying to find stuff to buy this year. It's tough. I mean, with the
Yeah.
interest rate movement, there's just not. It's like a 75% decrease in product in the market. So it's tough to find stuff this year.
Wow. Okay.
And then the other company, Crossman Career Builders, that's just me.
Yep.
And then the work I'm trying to do in space of making impact on people.
Okay. Now let's talk a little bit about that. As I know, like you had said, it's important to know what that mission is when you're working for a company or for yourself, and to know what the results are that you're looking for. With Crossman Career Builders, how did you get started in that, or why did you get started in that, and what kind of results are you working to achieve?
Sure. So, like, my dad was a pastor and civil rights
Hmm.
leader. So I grew up in
Okay.
kind of, that space that has a pretty big impact on the why. And I think that it's a combination of like passion, skill set, opportunity, and then seeing, where can I, with all my own God-given skills, make
Hmm.
impact. So, there's certain things I'm not good at. I'm dyslexic, like I'm not
Okay.
a good details guy. I'm not,
Hmm.
there's all things I can't do. But when I look at the news and there's all kinds of issues and issues, like for example with race, well, that
Yeah.
is something I have some background in. That is some bad things I make an impact in. And so when we look at the, for example, just the average discrepancy, the average net worth of an average white family, average black family, and when we dive into that, the biggest aspect of that is home ownership, equity in a home.
Yeah.
And so we dive into that. One of the things I worked on about 10 years ago in creating the next level of Crossman Career Builders was that there are 101 historically black colleges across the United States.
Okay.
The historically black college network was created at the end of the Civil War to educate the formerly enslaved population. And
Okay.
yet, for the next 100 years, plus years, none of them were teaching real estate education. None. So you think of like
Yeah.
basic things that like we teach people about, running your life,
Yeah.
having a successful life. HBCUs are doing a phenomenal job in so many, but they weren't teaching that. So I actually did a white paper for both the Obama administration and the Trump administration on this topic,
Hmm.
which led to me endowing the first ever real estate scholarship at Florida A&M University, Bethune-Cookman University, and Jackson State University. And on top
Yep.
of that, getting different foundations to do that. So we now have 11 endowed scholarships at 7 universities. I
Wow.
always tell people I'm a devout capitalist, like I'm a conservative Republican capitalist dude, and I believe in helping out with HBCUs and in improving diversity. And so we've been able to be a real bridge builder and getting people together on that topic. And
Yep.
so I think the impact's been real and meaningful.
Yeah. And in what ways do you work with individuals with Crossman Career Builders? I mean, that the endowment of these scholarships, but are you working directly with individuals or with groups of individuals?
Sure, so a ton of stuff we do is for free. I mean, we
Yeah.
have resources like on our website. We have a free guide to commercial real estate. College students all over the country use it. It's free.
Okay.
We do a lot of public speaking. If I get asked by a nonprofit to give a speech, I do it for free. And so, and then
Yep.
of course, almost daily, there's some college student, young professional that we try to help out and do things for. So a lot of those resources for free. If it's a bigger corporation or an established professional that needs some career coaching or wants a keynote speaker or something like that, we do charge for that work. But in a space where people don't have resources, we do that overwhelmingly at no cost.
Okay. Wow, that's wonderful. I mean, what is some of the key advice that you give to new or budding entrepreneurs, somebody who sees someone like yourself who has
Mhm.
had success in the space over time, but they don't really know your story and the things that you've had to go through to get where you are today? What
Sure.
kind of advice, yeah, key advice that you give to them, just kind of clue them into things to focus on in their onset of their journey?
Yeah, it's funny combination of being like really conservative and taking a ton of
Uh-huh.
calculated risk, right? Like it's
Yeah.
those two things. And what I mean by that
Right.
is like, look, if you're a person who's like, man, my goal is to be generous. Well, if you
Hmm.
want to be generous, you better have, some extra cash in your bank account at the end of the month.
Yeah.
If your goal is to be like giving and mentor people, well, you better have time on your calendar, right? Like you have to have capacity to do these different things. And so if you want to be an entrepreneur, like, man, you got to be conservative, dude. You gotta save money. You gotta live
Hmm.
below your means. You got to be very, very disciplined. You can't just have these dreams. I've had people say to me like, "Oh man, I really want to get in real estate," and I always tell
Yeah.
them like, do not have any debt. You can't have any credit card debt. Don't have any student loans. Don't have a car payment. If you have a mortgage, that's okay, but you need to be overpaying that. And then once you're in that space, then we can start talking. Of course, the most time I don't hear from them again. So, but like, guys, like you can't just be a
Right.
crazy dreamer. You've got to be super disciplined and conservative on one hand. On the other hand, you got to take a ton of calculated risk. And I was when I talk to college students, I'm like, when I say calculated risk, I'm like, don't let your girlfriend cut your hair. I'm joking, but like that's not a good calculated risk. But a good calculated risk is like networking and reaching out to people and asking for help and having a plan and then acting on it. I guest lecture a lot at University of Florida in their graduate school, and I'll meet these students who are getting 2 master's degrees. I mean, they're so
Yep.
impressive, and like they've never made a B their whole life, kind of thing. But then when I tell them to go on LinkedIn and connect to people,
Hmm.
they don't do it because they're so afraid to send the wrong LinkedIn invitation. They don't send any, right? They
Okay.
don't do any.
Hmm.
And then I think the other thing I'll tell you is like, man, do research. People would do a lot better. Like you researched me, right? So like that helps.
Sure. Yep.
But there's a lot of situations I'll get in where I'm like, this person has done no research whatsoever. I mean, a 5 minutes worth of research would have made this meeting go 900% better
Right.
for having some research. So I just want to say, I think it's a balance of like absolute old school core, blocking and tackling core basic stuff, added on
Yep.
doing some risky things, right? But
Yeah.
they're thoughtfully risky, not just crazy.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I like that. I like the consideration of the risk, taking taking a conservative approach to certain things, but also being willing to take some risks and to step and put yourself out there, and
Mhm.
including on LinkedIn or other ways to get connected with people that can help
Yeah.
you in your journey. Just like you said when you started, and having those conversations, setting up those 10 meetings and getting to finally somebody that you were able to make that connection with and ultimately work for.
Well, and I try to be very thankful. I try to be very encouraging and very
Yep.
intentional. I try to say yes. I mean, there are lots
Hmm.
of times I have to say no, and sometimes it breaks my heart to say
Right.
no. But I can't do it all. All right. So there has to be a discipline to it. But a lot of times I'm trying to be like, yes, let's do it. Let's take a chance. Let's try this. I
Yep.
mean, it's even just like being on a podcast. I mean, there's people that
Hmm.
probably, oh, that sounds scary, and then they won't be on a podcast. Well,
Sure.
it's funny. I did a podcast, and then a guy put it on Instagram, and this
Yep.
person on Instagram keeps coming at me, and you can't even tell who they are, but they're saying these kind of
Yeah.
hateful things towards me. At the same time, I'm like, gosh, I'm kind of thankful for them because they're helping promote a topic, even by
Sure.
just being with me. It's bringing
Yep.
attention to a topic I want attention on, and they're
Right.
actually helping me. Like it's good,
Yep.
but you have to put yourself out there a little bit. At some point, you got to get out there a little bit and get in a dialogue and mix things up. Not everybody's
Yeah.
ready for that.
Yeah. No, absolutely. So, with the successes that you've had, who would you say have been most influential in your life experience, and how it's kind of helped you on your journey to where you are today?
Do you want that from a like inspirational or practical, like literally, like who's helping me, or like in my mind, who's helping me? Which of those?
Let's go within your mind. Who's helping you?
Yeah, so I would say my faith in Christ. That really is it. It's like,
Yeah.
what am I doing and why am I doing it? I really I really believe Scripture. Like I really believe it, and I read it, and I screw up a lot, and I need a lot of
Yeah.
help, and I'm still working it all through. But that's core to it. I really connect to Old Testament Joseph.
Okay.
He was a big dreamer. I'm a big dreamer.
Yep.
He probably talked too much. I probably talked too much. His
Yep.
siblings threw him in a well. I think my siblings would like to throw me in a well. And so I get it. It's like I look at his life and then like the ups and the downs, and I don't know. There's so much, and even in the end of his life, when he's like reconciling with his family, it's all a hot
Right.
mess, and I'm like,
Yeah.
that. And then at the very end of his life, when he's dies and they're having his funeral, like, his family's there, but then like his coworkers are there, and they're of a different race, they're of a different religion. And
Yep.
when I die, I hope that my closest Christians, friends, and families are there, and I hope my atheist friends come, and I hope my friends who are of they're Jewish or Muslim or any other different background, I hope they come too. I do. I hope they come.
Yes.
And so I love his spirit of like Joseph's a guy that's living by his faith, and he's working with inmates and
Yep.
he's working with government, like he's
Yep.
doing it. Like I connect to that guy. So I thank you, Lord, for highlighting Joseph, because I feel you, Joseph. I feel you. I
Yeah.
feel like I'm in a literal well, but I've been in a few well. Felt like I was figuratively in a well.
Right. Right. And climbing back out again, or getting that support you need to get back out again. But
For sure.
yeah, no, I appreciate that answer. It's something that we talk a lot about with business, and is mindset, and having that mindset as we move forward in a venture that we're working on. And I think having a foundation in faith in Christ and knowing what those truths are that are in existing in your life establishes a firm foundation that you can build upon. And you can also, as you referenced, you can see throughout history examples of people who have struggled and had success, have struggled and have had success. And you can walk out from those examples the path that's set before you.
Well, and redemption, right? Like,
Hmm.
and how we redefine success. It was funny. I was talking to him the other day about Joseph, and I'm like, man, he served time. He's an
Yeah.
ex-con. And the person said back to me, well, he wasn't guilty of the crime. And I'm like, well, Moses committed murder and didn't
Hmm.
go to jail, right? Like, I
Yeah.
mean, there's all kinds of people. A lot of people are really broken and have really sketchy backgrounds, but through their redemption, a lot of times they have wisdom.
Yeah.
People I love to get a counsel from in so many areas of my life are people that have been to recovery groups and they've gone through
Hmm.
12 steps. And even though their life doesn't look like the roadmap to traditional Christian worldview,
Hmm.
they have a perspective and wisdom that really can add to give life to people. And I'm so grateful for that.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's a testimony that maybe we can't personally exactly relate to, but that we can experience through their eyes.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Well, let me ask you a question. I like to ask all my guests.
Mhm.
If you were to be handed $1 million today to invest in your business or another endeavor that you're working on, what would you do with that and why?
So for me, what I would immediately do is invest it and endow in more real estate scholarships at historically
Okay.
Black colleges. And
Yep.
the reason why is that I believe that with a very little bit of money, like that amount of money, we could have a very significant, impactful national conversation
Yeah.
and specific impact on the area of racism in America.
Okay.
When I tell people I'd like to see every Black college in America have a real estate course,
Yep.
that it would be one thing if I said I want every Black college in America to have a medical school. Like, oh, you're going to raise $500 billion or something. But if you're talking about having a real estate course, it's like $5,000. It's like $5,000.
Yeah.
So for like $1 million, I could, get a meeting together with a bunch of college presidents and say who's interested, and whoever's
Yep.
interested, like put that together. And I'm not saying that I want all these students in these Black colleges to go into the career real estate, although certainly some would be good.
Sure.
But what I am saying is like making sure that all these students have access to understand about the importance of reading your apartment lease before you sign it. Do you understand what you're
Yep.
signing?
Right.
Um, how do you get in position to own your first home? What's transgenerational wealth? It's sort of real estate financial literacy.
Yeah.
And it's hard for me to, it's funny, like with $1 million, like, yes, I could use a cash infusion in my business. Like there's
Sure.
all kinds of things
Yep.
I could,
Right.
I can name it. But I can't name anything that I could get a faster trajectory. I was on Capitol Hill last week,
Yep.
meeting with members of Congress, and it's like there's good work to do, and with a little bit of money, we could really flip the script big time, which would be pretty cool.
Well, appreciate that answer. I appreciate the work that you're doing, John, as well, not only in your own business with Crossmark Services, but also in the lives of so many people through Crossman Career Builders and the work you're doing.
I appreciate it, brother.
Oh,
It's hard. It's hard, and there are ups and downs, and there's
yeah,
pain, and there's all kinds of stuff. But it's good to take the calling and follow the path.
absolutely. What keeps you motivated?
It's my faith. I would also
Yep.
say that I do, particularly as I get older, try to make sure that I'm more well-rounded. We talked a little bit about mental health, and
Yeah.
I do monitor my sleep, and I really monitor my diet, and I monitor myself. And there's sometimes where I need to make sure I take care of myself. There's an old school thought process a lot of times in Christian faith. It's like everybody's more important to me. Like just take care of everybody
Hmm.
else. I'm last.
Sure.
The
Yep.
problem with that is that like if I'm out of gas, I can't help anybody, right?
Right.
So I have to have
Yeah.
some level of self-care so that I can take care of others. And
Yep.
so I can get into dark spaces. I mean, Zach, honestly, if I allow myself, but I have to
Yeah.
keep coming back to center. And I've suffered from a clinical depression. I've been through that whole process, and
Hmm.
hopefully from it, it's onboarded skill sets in me to help prevent it. And also when I find myself in a dark space, using those tools to treat that. It's so
Yeah.
funny. I was just telling my wife about this last night about like I don't mean to be judgmental of other people's journeys. All I can say
Yep.
is like I lost a really close friend to suicide, and knowing what I know now, one of the pieces of advice I would have given I didn't know to give Ben was like stop drinking. Like, and
Yeah.
he was having suicidal thoughts and then drinking, or it's pot has become so popular in our country, and I'm like,
Hmm.
hey, look, if you got some terrible disease and it relieves that pain, like absolutely, sure, I get that. At the same time, when you're 17 and you're feeling anxiety, and instead of learning the skill set of how to deal with anxiety, you're smoking pot, and then you never learn the skill set. Like you never learn the skill set. Listen, man,
Sure.
there are parts of life that, you know, you're with a sick child in the middle of the night, or
Yep.
you're dealing with an elderly parent that's got Alzheimer's, or you just lost your job and you thought you were doing. I mean, like life happens,
Yep.
and if you don't have the proper, you can't always just medicate out. You just can't keep
Yep.
drinking or smoking weed like forever and never actually learning, wait a minute, this is just really sad. I'm going to sit down, I'm going to cry, and I'm
Yep.
going to feel this feeling and I'm going to process it. So we got to have better conversations as a nation about, and even in churches, there are a lot of churches
Yeah.
that they just don't acknowledge hard stuff. I mean, sometimes it's weeping,
Yeah.
it's part of the journey.
Yep. Yep. We all go through hard situations in life,
Right.
and it definitely is important to learn those skills to be able
For
to
sure.
process and to move forward. And
Hmm.
the alternatives don't, they're temporary. I think a lot of the alternatives, solutions that people have, like you mentioned.
Yeah.
So, well,
Well, until they become permanent, right? Like,
yeah,
I mean, until something happens and you can't roll it
yeah,
back. And so, trying to thread that needle, trying to find that balance is key.
yeah, absolutely. Well, I appreciate this conversation, John. Now, if anybody would like to reach out to you to find out more about the work that you're doing, what's the best way for someone to connect with you?
Well, I'm pretty easy to find. They
Okay.
would Google me and find me. They can find me through my website at
Yep.
crossmancb.com, or my email is jcrossman@crossmancb
Okay.
.com. So they can find me there. But you're easy to. You mentioned I got the two podcasts and
Yep.
LinkedIn and Facebook and Twitter. So I try to be very accessible, and I appreciate
Yeah.
a good conversation, and I hope I can be a good resource to people.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And I know that you've offered quite a bit of great information today. So thank you for that. And thank you again for the work that you're doing, both locally and nationally, the real estate work, as well as the work you're doing with individuals and schools and the church community. I mean, you've got a lot that you've offered to us. So, John, thank you again. And also, I appreciate the fact that you are thinking of and identifying that need to take care of your own mental health and your, as you can
Really,
then be able to help serve others better.
absolutely, Zach. Thanks for having me, and thanks for all you're doing as well.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Appreciate that.